how to separate planning from doing so you can finally relax and focus. This is the 9th edition of my How to Flourish blog. And the highlights of this blog are, first, why it's important to separate planning, that is strategy, from doing, that is execution. And second, a highly effective 4-step method for separating planning from doing. This is also available in audio form and in written form on Substack and LinkedIn. You can see the links in the description here on YouTube. Many people map out excellent schedules, but find that their plans fall apart as soon as the working day begins. They're frequently disrupted by emails, calls, requests for meetings, or to do urgent tasks, and their schedule quickly gets thrown out the window. They then move to a reactive mode of working, where they work in reaction to whatever tasks emerge. Working in a reactive mode rather than following a well-designed schedule is less productive, focused, and satisfying. It leaves many people finishing their working days feeling exhausted, but like they've accomplished nothing. The central problem here is separating planning, that is strategy, from doing, that is execution. Overcoming this involves successful planning, where you create an effective and manageable schedule, and successful doing, where you stick to the schedule no matter what, except for genuine emergencies. I found this to be one of the most common problems people face in their working lives today, from the thousands of people I've coached, trained, or given talks to, over 700 of whom I've coached one-to-one. I've tried and tested various methods to solve this, and I've found that the following 4-step method is highly effective for successfully and consistently separating planning from doing. All right, let's go through each of the 4 steps of this method. Step 1, implement a work shutdown ritual. This is a powerful ritual to end your working day and plan the next one. It involves many benefits, not only for increasing productivity, but also for managing stress, preparing for sleep, reducing rumination, and becoming more present during activities outside of work, such as time with your loved ones. It was devised by Cal Newport, who experimented with several forms of it. In a recent explanation he gives of it, which I've linked in the blog, he emphasizes the benefits of a work shutdown ritual for productivity and for mental health. The aims of a work shutdown ritual are, first, to finish your working day, second, to plan the next day, and third, to mentally switch off from work. For the first of those, at the end of your work shutdown ritual, it helps to include an action to signify that your ritual is complete and therefore that your working day is over. This supports the third of the aims of a work shutdown ritual, to mentally switch off from work. Cal Newport used to have a phrase that he would say to himself whenever he finishes his work shutdown ritual, but he now ticks off a box in a planner, and I've linked to his explanation of that in the blog. Now, you could do other actions, such as simply closing your laptop or changing your clothes or switching locations, like going from the office to home. What you want is some action that signifies that your working day is over and that you're now entering a different state of mind, the state of mind for leisure, for relaxation, for quality time with loved ones, and so on. To implement a successful work shutdown ritual, schedule in your calendar a non-negotiable meeting with yourself of 15 to 30 minutes at the end of every working day. Make yourself unavailable during this time for calls, meetings, or anything else. If you need external accountability to stick to this, schedule it with a colleague or a friend, or if you have one, with an assistant or your coach. You could do this with someone else through what's called body doubling, which is where you both do your own work over video conference call, like Zoom. So here you could meet up over Zoom and do your own work shutdown rituals simultaneously in person with someone else or over a call with someone else, just to ensure that you both stick to it. And you needn't make this a permanent arrangement, but the idea here is to implement some method where you stick to it for at least a few weeks to form it as a new habit. Now, to most effectively complete the second aim of a work shutdown ritual of planning the next day, follow the next 2 steps in this 4-step method. Step 2, identify your essential task. Essentialism is a powerful mindset shift where we focus on and orient our lives around what is most important. In other words, what is essential. It offers many benefits, particularly for prioritization, focus, overcoming procrastination, and life satisfaction. Greg McKeown put this idea forward in his excellent 2014 book, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. As he describes in an article that I've linked in the blog, quote, essentialism is not about how to get more things done. It's about how to get the right things done. It's about making the wisest possible investment of your time and energy in order to operate at our highest point of contribution by doing only what is essential. End quote. Now, many people work long hours and complete many things off their lists every day, but often not the most important things. They're busy, but not busy doing the things that are most going to help them reach their most meaningful goals. This leads to the predicament I mentioned earlier, working in a reactive mode, ending the day feeling exhausted, but like they've accomplished nothing. Essentialism is a highly effective way to overcome this. A key essentialist practice is to identify our most important task for the next working day, our essential task, and build our day around it. This helps us focus on what matters most. Now, to plan your day using essentialism, do the following. First, look at your to-do list and schedule for tomorrow. Ask yourself, what's the most important, that is, essential, thing I need to do tomorrow? Another way to ask this question is, if I could only do one thing tomorrow, because, for example, an emergency might come up, what should it be? Second, plan your day around this. So if only one thing gets done, it's this. Third, schedule as much time as you can on this at the start of your working day. Fourth, schedule any more time you can later in the day to focus on this. And this might involve postponing some commitments, but this is the most important thing you need to do, remember, so it may well be worth postponing some commitments. And fifth, if it's a big project that can't be completed in a single day, break it down into chunks and identify one chunk you can do tomorrow. So, if you're preparing to launch a startup, tomorrow's essential task might be developing your business plan. If you're writing a book, it might be drafting the next chapter. And if you're training for a marathon, it might be a long distance run. Now, on the third step in that method I just described, which is schedule as much time as you can on your essential task at the start of your working day, even if it's only possible to schedule a short time on this before your first meeting or other commitment, say 10 to 15 minutes, fine, just schedule that. Working on what is most important is like exercise. There's no minimum amount of time it isn't worthwhile to spend doing it. Start with whatever amount of time you can and gradually increase. Now, do that 5-step process I just described during step 1, your work shutdown ritual. So your work shutdown ritual always involves identifying your essential task for the next day. Now, I've linked in the blog a recent overview of essentialism through a conversation between Greg McKeown, who coined the idea of essentialism, and Tim Ferriss on Tim Ferriss's podcast from earlier this year in 2025. That's linked in the blog, and that's a fascinating discussion I highly recommend. Okay, so now that you've identified your most important task and scheduled time to do it, let's plan how to maximize your productivity on that task. The next step does this. Step 3, time block your schedule. Time blocking is an extremely effective time management method by Cal Newport, which involves planning every minute of your working day. He reports that this can double your productivity. And this has also been my experience, and many of my clients have reported the same. To time block your schedule tomorrow. First, for every item in your schedule, assign an ambitious but achievable time estimate to it. Second, if it's a large task or one you might procrastinate from doing, break it down into subtasks and give each subtask a time estimate. And third, start by time blocking the time you've scheduled on your essential task, the one that you identified in step 2 of this 4-step process. I've included an example of a time-blocked schedule in blog. Now, you want to map out your time-blocked schedule during step 1, your work shutdown ritual. So your work shutdown ritual involves both identifying your essential task for the next day and time blocking how you'll complete it. And if you want to learn more about time blocking, I've written another How to Flourish blog on time blocking, what exactly it is and how you can do it most effectively, and that's linked in this blog. All right, 4th and final step, trust the process. Once you've completed those 3 steps before this one, you will have identified the most important thing that you need to do tomorrow. That was step 2, and planned how you'll execute it. That was step 3, both of which you've done during your work shutdown ritual, which was step 1. We've seen that separating planning from doing involves successful planning, where we create a schedule that's workable and we can stick to. So the 3 steps so far cover successful planning. Now we move on to successful doing. The final step in this 4-step process covers this. Here's how to engage in successful doing. First, follow your new schedule no matter what. Second, if something new comes up, don't do it now. Make a note of it and do it during the time you've planned to do it later. Now, the only exception to the first of those points, follow your new schedule no matter what, is genuine emergencies. This emphasizes the importance of asking yourself, when you identify the essential thing you need to do, if I could only do one thing tomorrow, because, for example, an emergency might come up, what should it be? By following this process, even if an emergency does come up, you might have nonetheless completed your essential task. For the second of those points, if something new comes up, don't do it now. Make a note of it and do it during the time you plan to do it later. Use your preferred place to keep notes as the day goes by and things pop into your mind or tasks come up that you need to remember. It could be a notebook, a Google Doc, the tasks list in your calendar, and so on. You just need some way you can get things out of your mind and store them for your attention later so you can maintain focus on the task that you're working on. Build into your schedule time to complete tasks like these later in the day. For example, 15 to 30 minutes in the late afternoon every weekday. Now, as I've mentioned, people often fail to separate planning from doing, despite planning excellent schedules, because their plan falls apart as soon as the working day begins. Some interruptions are unavoidable, but even when these come up, as quickly as possible, we need to return to the schedule that we've mapped out in the first 3 steps in this 4-step method, rather than giving up on the schedule and moving to a reactive mode of work. Now, to do this, we need to embrace this 4th step. Trust the process. You will be receiving emails, text messages, and so on while you're not looking at your inboxes, but they can wait. There are urgent tasks you need to complete today, but they can also wait. All of these waited while you were asleep, and they can wait a little longer. As long as you've scheduled time to reply and complete tasks within a good time frame, it will all get done punctually. Right now, trust the process and focus on your essential task, following your time-blocked schedule to complete it. All right, so those are the 4 key steps in this 4-step method. Next section of this blog, pre-commitment. To ensure that you stick to the process, let's do some pre-commitment. This is where we identify something that could prevent us from doing what we want to do and commit to preemptive action now to stop that from happening. So to do this, ask yourself, what factor, which is within my power to control, could prevent me from trusting the process? For example, if you have a tendency to check your emails first thing in the morning, try blocking your email using Freedom Dot 2, Boomerang for Gmail or Outlook, or Self-Control for Mac. Or if you have a tendency to check social media on your phone while working, put your phone in a different room or block social media using Opal. I've linked all of those in the blog, and I've also put a link to a research study that shows that putting your phone in a different room significantly improves your performance while you work. Now, I want to address a reasonable objection that some people might raise against some aspects of this method. And it can be expressed using the following question. What about new, more important opportunities that emerge? To explain this, some people work in roles where new opportunities regularly emerge that are even more important than the task they identified the previous day as the most important one today. This means that the most important task can change over the course of a day, and they might need to shift their priorities if they're to maintain focus on the essential task. Now, this presents an objection to one of the points I made earlier. To recap the point, it was the following. If something new comes up, don't do it now. Make a note of it and do it during the time you've planned to do it later. So, for example, if you work in sales, you might have identified the previous day that the most important task for you to do today is to identify from your mailing list potential customers who have shown interest in your service. These are people known in sales as warm leads. And then create an email nurture sequence to build their interest and to send them the first email in that sequence. But then you receive a call or an email from a prospective client representing a big company for a lucrative business-to-business sale. Had this opportunity emerged yesterday, you would have identified this as the most important thing to do today. So, what now? There is nonetheless an effective way to follow all 4 of the steps in this method I've described, even while working in a role where important tasks requiring immediate responses, like in this example, frequently emerge. I recommend 2 strategies here. First, identify the times of day such opportunities are most likely to emerge and be available for immediate reply during these times. Now, you can figure this out based on 2 factors: past experience and the common time zones of your prospective clients. So, for example, if you live in New York and have prospective clients across the USA, Australasia, and Europe, you could schedule to be available for immediate responses from 10 to 11 a.m. in New York, which is mid to late afternoon across Europe, and 6 to 7 p.m. in New York, which is mid-afternoon on the US West Coast, early morning on the East Coast of Australia, and mid-morning in New Zealand. For anyone contacting you outside those times, you could set up an automated reply stating that you'll respond within those times, but to call you if an immediate reply is needed. This way, people have received an immediate reply at any hour, be it from you or an automated response, and they have the option to call you immediately if they need a quicker response. Now, if you need to be available for immediate response at different times, additional times, or for more time than that amount of time, you could tweak the process as necessary. Now, I've explained that in relation to that example of sales, so I used the phrase prospective clients, but you could apply the same principles to current clients or members of your team or your boss and leadership team and so on. Anyone that needs to reach you urgently throughout the day, you pinpoint specific times of the day that are best for you, that enable you to do other things rather than be working in a reactive mode all the time. So you can still get your most important, that is essential task done at the start of the day, ideally, and at some other points throughout the day too. Okay, the second strategy to accommodate, to respond to this objection is this. Schedule the first time you're available for immediate response as far into the day as possible so you can make progress on your essential task for the day. Now, this was the third point I made in the second step of this process, which was on identifying your essential task. That third point was schedule as much time as you can on your most important task at the start of your working day. This way, if you do this, if a new task emerges that's even more important than the one you identified before the day began, you've nonetheless made progress on the task you identified as the most important one before you move into tasks that require immediate action and before you potentially encounter other tasks that are even more important than the one you identified yesterday. So you've nonetheless made good progress on the task you identified yesterday as your essential task for today. All right. The takeaway from this blog: to separate planning from doing, follow these 4 steps. Step 1, implement a work shutdown ritual. Plan by the end of the day before. Step 2, identify your essential task. That is, identify your most important task. Third, time block your schedule. Assign challenging but doable time blocks to each item in your schedule. And fourth, trust the process. Don't go back on the plan. Now, we recently ran a masterclass on separating strategy from execution in the Flow Lab, which is a free platform I recently co-launched where we run masterclasses and share resources on flow states. If you'd like to join the Flow Lab and watch a recording of the masterclass, click the link I've included in the blog and in the notes on this YouTube video. It's totally free to join, and the masterclasses are totally free to attend. We run them every month. What do you most struggle with when separating planning from doing? Have you found any other methods effective? I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments, on YouTube, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Substack, wherever you want to post them. And I'd love to hear any other thoughts you have about separating planning from doing. Good luck. Let me know if you've got any questions.